Do I even like the subgenre of Romantasy? Let's start with talking about the tone. Now for the characters. That leads us to the chemistry. That also impacts the spice. The plot and the magic. Hello and welcome to my BookTube channel, Jack and the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. Today we're talking about one genre in particular, but you will see lots of the bookish lifestyle, because in this reading vlog, I want to focus specifically on romantasy. I have a very complex relationship with fantasy romance. I want to adore it, because on paper, it has everything that I want as a reader. I love fantasy books. I like magic systems and world building and different creatures. I like that there's really creative plot twists and turns, and I find it can be very immersive for me. So I love fantasy. And I also really love romance. I love that romantic tension that builds over time. I love the connection of the characters and the chemistry. I love spice. So I love romance as well, historical and contemporary. I love it all. So combining these two genres seems like it should really be the perfect Jack book or series. Also, with romantasy, you're not going to get a whole lot of grim, dark tones. I mean, you can. There's lots of battle scenes, and I'm not going to say everybody lives in romantasy books, but usually it's going to be a little bit lighter in tone. And nothing against grimdark fantasy, I like it. It just has a time and a place. So romantasy, I think, is gonna make you feel a little bit better. I don't really know. That's not a blanket statement, but in general, the tone is gonna be a little bit lighter because we're focusing on like fluffy things like love. Despite all that, I have really had a rough time finding romantasy books and series that I love. So ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, I do really like, so I am on that bandwagon, but I'm not completely on the Sarah J. Maas bandwagon because there's been some flops recently. But it's been challenging for me, and for a lot of different reasons, although they seem to be consistent reasons. So what I want to do in this reading vlog is I want to read only romantasy, and I'm going to talk to you when I start each book about some of those things that hold me back from loving this subgenre, but some of the reasons why I picked up that particular book, or like in particular what I'm optimistic about or what I'm challenged with. And I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below about different romantasy series that you think might work for me based on some of the things I'm talking about here. Let's talk about the first book that I'm going to read in this reading vlog. Now this one is actually book 5 in a series. It's book 5 in the Plated Prisoner series. This one is called Gold, and I'm reading it on my Kindle from Kindle Unlimited. Now, for books 1 through 4, I have a dedicated reading vlog that you can check out where I go through the whole experience. And this one was really, really interesting as well because I had that same problem of such potential in book 1, and then it was just a downward spiral towards the end, books 3 and 4. But here's the thing that I noticed. I watched the video back, and I did not like books 3 and 4 in particular, and I listened to those on audio. And I even mentioned in my vlog that I didn't like the narrator's voice. It was so like breathy. And I think when I'm challenged with female main characters, a narrator can really influence that and kind of accentuate things I don't like. So the inflections and the words and the voice can make her sound more whiny, more desperate, more pathetic. And if I'm already on the border of feeling that way, the narrator can push me over the edge. So that's why I'm thinking I want to try this series again by reading book 5, but I want to physically read it rather than listening to an audio adaptation of it. And here's something else I am thinking of going into this. I have gotten more experienced in reading other like fantasy series, and I have come to notice and accept that some books are really transitional books. They're not meant to be super satisfying in the plot or have huge character breakthroughs because they're transitions from like book 1 to book 3 or like whatever number they are. So in the Plated Prisoner books, where I started to struggle is we really focused on trauma, and we just sat in that trauma, and our main character just seemed very whiny and, again, not strategic, driven by her emotions. That's how I was feeling. And I'm like, you know, I really can't get past the potential of this series because I love the magic. It is a King Midas retelling, and we have positioned a strong, badass female main character. It can happen. Oren, I believe in you. It's possible. And so I think that these middle books that I rated so low are really just transitioning to the next part. So those are the things that I'm thinking of going into this, because again, I'm really liking the concept and the magic, and there were some plot twists. And the other thing is too, I really have to get used to, if a book doesn't go the way that I thought it would or wanted it to, I can accept it for what it is. And I have to kind of like acknowledge that a little bit differently, because if I'm really expecting it to go a certain way and it doesn't, that can kind of disappoint me sometimes, because my mood was looking for something in particular and it didn't go that way. So I've had some space from this series, and I think that could be good because I've read like all 4 books in 1 month, and also that could have played a role into just like being burnt out on it without really realizing. So I've had some space and I've picked this one up. I've already read about 46% of the way into it. And I will say that taking a break from the series was refreshing, but I did forget a lot of the details, a lot of the cliffhangers, I forgot a lot of the characters, so it's not as impactful with the plot. But I do like the direction this is going because it's more satisfying in the plot. There's a strong emphasis on vengeance because our love interests are separated, and he's like burning the world to the ground, anyone that's ever hurt her, and that can be kind of satisfying. I think there was very much like victim mentality and making me feel like trapped and powerless and like that kind of vibe in books 3 and 4. And so now we have like some satisfying vengeance that I'm enjoying, and she is being a little bit more strategic in terms of, you know, she's saying, I don't want to be used as a tool for anybody else's war. Like, if I get involved in a battle, it's going to be because I choose to. And she has had these like false promises in the other books where she like talks a big game but doesn't follow through on it. But I actually see her actions aligning with her words. So she's not bugging me as much. Although she is still really, really obsessed with her man at the point of like, she keeps thinking about getting back to him. And that's priority over everything. And we're on the borderline of losing that strategic thinking, because if she's like, oh, I don't want to think about what's going on with this revolution and how I'm a symbol to people and I can help stand up for the oppressed people, I'm just worried about getting laid again. Like, that's where Romantasy can also really lose me. So 46% of the way in, it was like 5 stars for a long time, but now it's getting kind of repetitive. So we're at risk here. 46% of the way in, we're at a pivotal moment. So kicking off this vlog, I'm going to finish this and then let you know how it ended up. Because again, we have a situation of fantastic potential in the Play to Prisoner series. And you know what's funny? In the video I did, the dedicated reading vlog for the Play to Prisoner, I talked about how badly I wanted to buy the pretty hardcovers. And I still do. I still want to buy them. But why would I buy it if it's a 2-star series, right? I need to be responsible. But the itch is coming back again, so we'll see how this one goes. But I need to try to be responsible with my book buying at least. But like I said, we're going to read Gold first, and I'll let you know how this goes. Look, I'm even representing one of my favorite Romantasy books. Just Call Me Darling, just like the Vicious Lost Boys series. Nah, that one too started off really strong and then fell off as the books continued, but what can you do? Today is Thursday, so I thought it was a perfect time to do a reading update. Let's start with the first book that I have finished for this weekly reading vlog, and that is Gold, Book 5 in the Plated Prisoner series. I mentioned that books 1 through 4 were kind of a downward spiral for me when I read them last year, and there was a couple reasons for why that could have been. Firstly, I read them all back to back, so maybe I was burnt out. Also, the audiobook for books 3 and 4, I didn't enjoy the narrator, so maybe that subconsciously contributed to my enjoyment of it. I didn't like the tone, that we kind of sat in some trauma and I felt like it was just like victim status. And primarily, the female main character, Oren, was very emotionally driven, very weak, very whiny. She talked a big game but didn't back it up, and I just really didn't enjoy her. I'm happy to say that book 5 went a lot better for me. I don't know if that's because I was physically reading it, so I didn't have that narrator in my ears. I don't know if I had enough space away from it. I don't know if I'm in a mood that better pairs with it, but I know that it was a lot stronger for me. Let's start with talking about the tone of Gold. So, as I said, 3 and 4 really sat in the trauma and made me feel anxious and trapped. With this one, our love interests are separated, and the male love interest is taking this whole I'm gonna scorch the earth until I can get my woman back kind of approach. So it was very vengeful and violent, and I felt really satisfied, so I was really in it for that. And the tone was completely different for this book, so I really enjoyed that change of pace. Now for the characters. Aren did not bug me as much. I was so happy that I enjoyed her more. Now she still really has a focus on this love interest that's taking priority over other things that are pretty important. Like getting back to him is more important than anything else she's confronted with. So a lot of times it kind of makes me roll my eyes, but this is Romantasy. You kind of have to expect that a little bit. And it was, interestingly enough, the male main character that grated on my nerves a little bit with this. I said he's being all violent, taking down anybody that could have possibly wronged her in her past, which I liked that. But it dragged on for a long time. And also he kind of reeked of codependency, in my opinion, because like he stopped bathing, he stopped eating, he stopped sleeping. Like all he's focusing on is vengeance and finding a way back to her. And I'm like, cool. I agree with that. Romantasy. You go, bro. You be dedicated. But it's like, you can't even take care of yourself. Like, you need a woman to make sure that you shower and that you eat. He kind of just read like a man-child to me. That leads us to the chemistry, which I can't really have too much of an opinion on because the whole point of the book is that our love interests are separated. So it's just this feeling of codependency on each other and kind of skewing their priorities because they're just trying to find each other again. That also impacts the spice, but never fear because there are some other character POVs, and in some of them we do get some spice, which I liked. It was only a little bit because, like I said, that's not the focus of all the characters right now with where they are in their journeys. But I have to tell you that this did the stereotypical thing in Romantasy that I despise. It's one reason I have a hard time taking the genre seriously, and it's a critique I've heard from other fantasy readers why they can't take Romantasy seriously. There's an epic battle. Epic. People are getting slaughtered. They're dying. And two characters decide, well, this is a great time to bang one out because if I'm gonna die, I want to be alive first. Like, that's the conversation. That is the dialogue or the inner monologue of this situation. So they decide like, okay, we're just gonna bang this out real quick and then we'll get back to work. And it's just so stereotypical and it's disappointing because this is what I mean when Romantasy has skewed priorities. Like, I get where you're going with that about like feeling alive, but come on. The plot, I'm not going to tell you too much about because it's book 5 in a series. I don't want to spoil it, but I will say that I was very engaged. It was medium fast, medium high as far as pacing. I was really enjoying some of the plot twists, especially towards the end that we encountered. Although I have to say, like on the last page, a new trope was introduced that I despise. And I really hope that's not going to be a focus of book 6, because that can destroy, it will annihilate like the whole series for me if we spend too much time on this trope. But I'm going to cross my fingers. For the most part, the plot was like 4.5 stars. If not for that last page, it would have been 5 stars. And the magic in gold was 5 stars. I love it. And this is what I mean when I say that Romantasy has so much potential for me, because I love the creativity of the magic, and I love how it's kind of influenced by our love interests and their love for each other and how they make each other more powerful. I love the magic in gold. In terms of rating, I'm gonna land on a very low 4 stars. In fact, I think I would call it a 3.75, and it's mostly because I hated that last page and the trope that was introduced. I'm scared of the direction that's gonna go, and our male main character being a man-child, and his plotline and his POV just kind of dragging a little bit. But otherwise, I was really impressed with how I felt reading this. I really felt engaged. I wanted to pick it up. I didn't want to put it down. I really enjoyed the read. For my next read, you saw that I picked up the next book in the Throne of Glass series. This is Empire of Storms. And now this is another really interesting one. I did a reading vlog where I tried reading the Throne of Glass books. I think I was trying to see how many that I could read in 1 week. And what's also interesting, very similar with my theme of romantasy, it started off so strong and then drastically took a nosedive downhill, and my enjoyment was really low towards the end. So I've been hesitant to pick this one up, and I'm not that far in. I just started, but what I'm noticing is so much time has passed. Again, like it might be my enjoyment goes downhill because I'm reading them too close together and I get burnt out, but so much time has passed, I forget everything that's going on. Like in the plot, I don't remember who the characters are. I actually had to ask my cousin, like, who is this Lorcan character again? Like, he kind of reminds me of Lucian from another series. Like, I am so confused. And then also because this is Fae, I'm also really getting confused with the Plated Prisoner series, which has Fae, and other Fae books that I have read, because they are all so similar. And I get this probably inspired a lot of other Fae stories, but it doesn't matter. The details are getting really jumbled, so I'm not off to a good start, but I will finish this. I don't know if I'll finish it this week for this vlog, but I am going to finish this month, and hopefully I can finish out the series this year, because yeah, that's important. So I started that, but then format-wise, I only have that book physically, and I wanted an audiobook. And so I was looking at my Libby tags list, and I saw that I had the Song of the Marked, like marked or tagged for an audiobook. So I checked that one out, and I was listening to it last night. I was getting ready for bed, and I actually fell asleep while I was listening to it, so I have to like rewind it. But it's also on Kindle Unlimited, so I have 2 format options to read this one. And it's interesting because if you watched my August TBR, this is not on it. Like, this one really snuck in just because I was looking for an audiobook. But this is one that has intrigued me in terms of the plot. And I'll tell you more about it, like, as I learn the plot for myself. But something else, like when I'm looking at the summary, it said if you want like found family vibes, that this is a good book or series for that. And I love found family. So I picked that up, and I'm on like chapter 3. I think I have to like re-find it since I fell asleep. But then, in a plot twist of my own life, the book that I really want to read, I just ordered it on Pango, and I did not expect for it to arrive in time for me to read this week. I was just planning on reading it this month. So now I don't know what I'm going to do, because I just got From Blood and Ash, which, okay, listen, I am ridiculous because I own this in paperback, but I wanted it hardcover. I haven't even read it yet, and I'm like, I bought book 1 and book 2 in hardcover because I just think they're pretty. So I am absolutely ridiculous. So I have this one that I'm really interested in reading. It's on my 24 books to read in 2024 list. Also, I got the graphic audio book, part 1, for this checked out from Libby. And here's the thing, because I said that maybe audiobooks negatively impact my read. That's a consideration. And I also don't want my enjoyment to be impacted by the graphic audio, because I've never read a graphic audio before. I want to try one, but now I'm kind of like, that might not be fair to do to this book because it might hurt my enjoyment because I don't know if graphic audio works for me. If you don't know what graphic audio is, it's like a whole production of an audiobook where instead of the narrator saying to you, and the door squeaked open, they would just play the sound of a door squeaking. And then there's usually like a full cast. So instead of them saying, and she said this, and he said that, it's just different actors. At least that's my understanding of a graphic audio. I haven't tried one yet. So I have that option, but I don't know if it would change my enjoyment. So I might read a couple chapters physically and then try that. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I have so many options now that I'm like so excited. I'm nervous if I'm gonna like these because Romantasy is so hit or miss for me, but I'm also just so excited to finish up work and get back to my books.
¿Sí? Sí. Vamos por acá. Continuemos. Abigail, ¿qué le duele a él?
Seriously, can we please use different names in Romantasy books? If you weren't aware, there is also a Dorian in the Throne of Glass series.
Well, it's the end of the week, and I am here to answer the question that brought us all together today. Do I even like the subgenre of Romantasy? The answer is, it kind of depends. So let's start with the other book that I finished this week, From Blood and Ash. I will tell you right up front, I loved this book, but it was not perfect. So let's go through the categories, starting with the plot. This is something that I absolutely loved, but it was very stereotypical. There was not a single plot twist that caught me off guard, but I don't know if that is a bad thing necessarily. For me, I can know what's gonna happen, but still enjoy the journey of getting there. So I really enjoyed the plot of this one. If you don't know what this popular series is about, at least for book one, we have our main character, Poppy, who is this maiden or chosen one of the queen. Nobody's allowed to see her, talk to her, touch her. She lives a very sheltered life before this big ceremony she undergoes when she's 19 years old. But she has a couple guards, a couple personal guards that she gets very close with. One of them is very handsome, and so that's the love interest there. But there's a lot going on with the overall kingdom that she's in. There are some vampire creatures, which adds like a lot of interesting things to the plot, and she herself has some very interesting abilities. The tone of this book was a lot darker than I expected. I mean, I knew there were vampires, so I knew it was going to be a little bit more like dark or horror, but there were like a lot of deaths, a lot of violence, and kind of made me bummed out at times because not everyone you meet survives this book. Now for more in-depth discussion on the characters. Main character Poppy is 18 years old, and that's something that really frustrates me in Romantasy is that these female main characters are so young. And it definitely shows up in different ways because I hate the attitude of like a 16-year-old who's super snotty and acts like they know everything. That's not Poppy in this book. I actually really liked her, but I did kind of roll my eyes when I found out she was 18 because that is very stereotypical and usually has a negative connotation for me. Something else that was very stereotypical was the description of Hawk, the love interest. Here's the thing with Romantasy. All the guys are described to be the same way. They're all really tall. They have broad chests. They're really muscular. They're dark. They move in the shadows. And this one in particular, her observation of him is that he seems to be, you know, harboring some pain and some sadness that makes him just very broody. And again, so stereotypical. It doesn't necessarily take away from my overall enjoyment of the book, but it just goes to show that a lot of things are the same across these Romantasy books. Now for the chemistry between our love interests. And this is one case where I really enjoyed it. It was not insta-love. It was not based on the instant attraction they had to each other, which they did, but they took the time to learn about each other. And it was almost a slow burn. Things came together over time, even though they realized right away that the other is super hot, you know, their affections grew for each other, and that's more realistic, and I really like that tension and that slow burn. Now let's talk about the spice, because everything else I've talked about up to this point has been a glowing review or an accepted stereotype of the subgenre of Romantasy. But the spice in this book did something that is so bad, so stereotypical, that it makes me really reconsider the entire subgenre. So again, this book has a situation of really inopportune spice, where our female main character just gets so hot for this guy, regardless of the timing, the location, the situation, or the blaring red flags. She just disregards everything because he's so hot and she just has to have him right now. And that is really, really what makes me question my enjoyment of this subgenre. And I know not every book is going to do that, but you don't really know until you get into it and how much it's going to personally bug you with your tastes, your mood, and the specific characters. But this dropped my rating a whole star level. But let's finish it out with something positive, because the magic system and the world building, I was eating up. And we got a lot of great information on it, particularly towards the end. And I'm really enjoying learning about this world and kind of the vampire dynamics, because we have this like vampire zombie kind of army that tries to infiltrate the kingdom, and so they're always fighting, like the guards are always fighting against these guys. Sometimes the guards get infected, and you know, we don't want that infection to come into the kingdom, and so that plays into the plot a lot. But I loved learning about this, and I loved learning about the Ascension, which is the ceremony that Poppy is getting ready for, I think when she turns 19, and there's just so much to uncover with this world and the creatures and the magic and everybody's different abilities. I really, really love the magic. Overall, my rating for this, it was an enthusiastic, solid 5 stars for 90%. 90% of it. I was really, really into it. I read this whole book in 24 hours because I was so interested in it. And I was thinking to myself, wow, like, this is what I've been looking for with Romantasy, is that feeling that you're just so immersed in the world and you're dying to see what happens next. You can't put it down. You're excited to pick it up. I was feeling that until like the last 10%. And then it was really the spice and Poppy just totally like blind to everything except for her hormones that made me really disgusted. So overall, really solid read. I can forgive her for that, but I was warned by someone who's read like 3 books in the series that if I was bugged by that, to buckle up for the next books because it kind of continues. So I will take that preparation into the rest of the series because I do plan on continuing. Next, I read The Song of the Marked, and as you saw, I checked this one out on audiobook, and I was reading it on Kindle Unlimited, kind of having multiple formats so I could do some other things, and I knew that Romantasy is difficult for me with the audiobook narrator, and this was definitely the case of that, so I don't know if that played into my overall lack of enjoyment for this book. What I liked about The Song of the March was the plot. I really like this idea that there is this pandemic or this sickness that's going around and really destroying the people, but our main character, Cass, is immune to it. And she also has this band of buddies, and they're all thieves, and they're trying to like steal in order to bring medicine to someone who has this illness. And I like the plot line of the emperor or the king trying to get her help in curing the sickness, but like, do we really trust this leader? And then the mysterious captain of the guards who's super attractive and all powerful. So I liked the plot. And then along with that, the magic. I like the magic. Everyone has different abilities, and so we learn more and more about the abilities that people have and the different, I guess, aspects of the magic, like a little bit of portal type stuff. And I like the magic in this as well. So plot and magic, very unique, and had me intrigued. What really lost me were the characters. This was a female main character that I could not stand. I didn't like her. She was, as my friend Roger Reeds would label this as, she was moronically abrasive. That is why I hate a lot of these female main characters. I feel like the authors try too hard to make them edgy and talk back, and again, it just reads like a snotty 16-year-old who thinks they know everything. And I didn't like her banter. I think it was intended to be banter, but the banter with the captain of the guards, who's a love interest, he's just trying to help her out, and she is just so dumb and always fighting back on him, not looking at her surroundings, not being strategic. She is emotionally driven. And that emotion is just being a brat. Based on that, I think you can tell that as far as chemistry and spice, I was not invested in this romance because I think he's too good for her. I also hated how the narrator did like an Irish or a Scottish accent for him. It was very, very hard to follow and understand, and just did weird things for my brain. But I've got to be honest with you, I DNF'd this book. I passed the 50% mark, so I'm still counting it as read, but hey, maybe the chemistry, I feel differently, but I don't think so, because I am just rooting for this main character to die. Finishing out this Romantasy reading week, you also saw me make a little bit of progress in Empire of Storms, but not much. This is taking a lot of brain power since it's been like well over a year, maybe even 2 years since I read the prior book in the series, so I'm having a really hard time because we're picking up like right after those events. I'm having a hard time remembering the characters and the events and all the things, so I have to read it very slowly. And something that I remember about how I feel with this is Aylin, our main character, she is also an example of someone I feel who is emotionally driven, but more importantly gives me that I know everything kind of 16-year-old vibe. Like, she's young, but we're just expected to believe that she is naturally good at everything. Naturally this powerful warrior. Naturally this intelligent strategist, which she's not. She's very emotionally driven, and I don't like how she disregards her friends that have experience, that have good insight, that, she just thinks she knows better than them and everybody else. And I really don't like her. But I am in this story for, what's her name? Manon Blackbeak? The witch with the little wyvern thing? Like, yes, if she was our main character, I'd probably like this a lot more. I want to spend more time with her. I like her storyline. I like her character. I like the chemistry of the romance that's brewing there. So I will keep reading, and I'm in it for my girl Manon. So how do I feel about Romantasy after this week is over? Well, I am still in the mood to read Romantasy. I really enjoy a lot of elements of it. It's just those few things that stick out to me. And hey, just because something is stereotypical to its genre doesn't mean I'm not going to enjoy it. I really enjoy the journey of getting there. I like to see how authors take on these stereotypes differently. And hey, it's kind of like if you read a horror book, you can't be surprised that you're scared by it, right? Like, that's what comes with the genre. So I'm still interested in reading more Romantasy. There's so many on my TBR that I'm really excited to try, but I think the secret is to give up on them if I know it's really not going to work for me. If the female main character is moronically abrasive, that's something I really don't want to invest my time in and read about. So I got to experience a lot. So happy I did this and really force myself to think about the stereotypes, the things I can live with, the things I can't. This was a very good experiment, and thank you so much for coming along with me on the ride. Hope all of your reads are 5-star reads, and I'll see you in the next video.